Hi, this is Michael Sean Harris, and we're at episode 5 of Mike's Moment of. All right, before I get to our guests, I want to share a few reviews I've gotten since we started. I just realized that iTunes doesn't show all of the reviews. They show it by country. So I found reviews on iTunes in the US, Jamaica, and the UK. So this review is from Dr. Little Singer Girl in the UK. And I know who that is. And it goes, "Can't wait." And she gave me 5 stars. And she says, "Okay, now I'm all psyched and ready for these episodes. Look forward to being here with you in this space for a long, productive time." Thanks, Nikkei. I know it's you. I'm looking forward to it too. I hope you check out the rest of the episodes. And from Cassie, actually it says Cassie is a lot of eyes, in Jamaica. She says, "Love, 5 stars. Love the transparency. So real." Thank you very much. Trying to keep it real and really just sharing a lot of friends and topics that are close to me. So I hope you stay tuned and check out the rest of the episodes as well. And from the US, Jermaine says, "Loving it. 5 stars as well. Thanks for sharing this with the world, the whole world." Yes, indeed, it's the whole world. And Diana Kingdom, 5 stars again. "Hey, Michael, me like it." And in reference to episode 3, which was a body talk episode, K Fancy Madam says, "Ooh, I've been experiencing this. I've experienced this. You're fatty. People got no filter." So true, especially in Jamaica. Anyway, my guest today is my very good friend Peter Ashbourne. Peter and I both attended Wolmer's Boys High School and Berklee College of Music, but we just did it 20 years apart. But since I met Peter, I've worked with him a lot, writing and teaching the first music technology courses at the School of Music and designing the first iteration of the Music Tech Lab. Also working together on Digicel Rising Stars and then for many other projects. Today, Peter takes us on a journey through his life and career in music and the Jamaican music scene. Also his studies, all the while using technology of the day as milestones. And there's more about Peter in the show notes, so you can check that out. All right, I joke and say that this one is for the music and history nerds, but hopefully everyone will enjoy it. All right? I'm Michael Sean Harris, and you're listening to Mike's Moment of, a weekly podcast in which I, along with my guests, share our various interests in moments of inspiration, truth, life, technology, culture, and more. I hope you're entertained and informed, and that you feel inspired to join me again and again in my moments of. All right, so welcome to another episode of Mike's Moment of. Today, we're speaking with my good friend, Peter Ashbourne. He doesn't like when we do the big, long intros, so I'm going to put all the information in the show notes. But quick thing, he's a composer, he's a music technologist, he's been doing jingles forever. He's, what else? He's a musical director and more. So today we're going to talk specifically about technology, about your journey with technology, using technology, and you've been through several phases of technology as well. So we can start at the beginning, and then we'll go through and I'll ask questions here and there. So how you do?
Okay, thanks, Michael. Perhaps I should start by saying that I was just a musician,
Right.
Musician. I played violin, I played piano. I was at that point just starting off trying my hand at arranging, without having any formal training in that, my ears were what were leading me around. All right. And just leaving high school, a friend of mine took me down to Federal Records one day.
Okay.
And
where was Federal Records?
Federal Records is where those people who know Kingston, the studio scene in Kingston, it is what they now call Tough Gong.
Okay.
It is what Bob Marley eventually bought the premises.
Okay.
Right. They bought the premises during the 1970s, I think.
70s. Okay, and who owned Federal Records?
The Couries. It was the Couries, Ken Courie, because that was where Federal Records started. Ken Courie was there at the very beginning when Stanley Motor bought the cutting lathe whenever it was 1958 or something like that.
Okay.
And that was the first sort of any kind of recording facility that you had in Jamaica. Those days, remember, the 1958 tape recorders were in a very primitive stage. Remember, this side of the world found out about tape recorders when the Americans went into Berlin. In 1945. And this is when they found these German contraptions with this mylar tape and thing. That is, prior to that, recordings were done straight to the vinyl. You recorded, and then the cutting head cut the master. That's how most of the things were done. Right? Anyway, this is fairly early. This is 1958. This is more than 10 years later, but it's still, close to the cutting edge, the bleeding edge, right? On technology. But then Khoury, I think he between him and Coxon, one of them brought in the recording tape recorders. Started off with 1-track tape recorders, then 2-track, then 3-track, etc., etc. All right. By the time I was taken out to Federal Records, and I ended up being offered a job there as an assistant to Ken Lazarus. He was the A&R there. Right?
Okay. And you were how old then? 10? No. 15?
No. I think I was 20.
Okay. I mean, it wouldn't be far-fetched because when you're playing violin.
Yes.
And you're the prodigy at what, 8 or no, younger?
Yeah, about 8.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're about what, 16? You said?
No.
20.
Yeah, I was 20. I was 20.
Okay.
And I ended up being. Now, prior to that, I was, like I said, a musician. I played a couple of instruments, and because I dabbled in the arranging and the band thing, and I was just starting a singing group where I didn't sing, but because of that, I knew about microphones and speakers and amplifiers and organs and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But you learn about those things. But that's what they are. That's as far. Now, going to Federal Records was when I started to appreciate how important, the importance of how the equipment fits into making recordings and sound,
right.
Electronic sound in any way. And so, thinking back on it, it really has shaped some of my values, because my production values are studio values, rather than stage values, which is different.
So when you first went into Federal Records, what was the kind of equipment that you met?
All right, by the time I went in there, I think it was a 4-track recording. They had a multi-track, 4-track multi-track, and it had just come in. I think it was a Scully machine. Right?
Okay. And Scully is from where?
Scully is American.
American. Okay.
Yeah, Scully is American. They had a Scully 4-track. What kind of board was it? I don't remember the board. I really don't remember the board. I know that the studios at that time had those broadcast boards, with those sort of semi-rotary fader things.
Right.
But anyway, that was my blooding, and that's when I started, a number of microphones that you don't see on stage, that's what they're using in the studio, and how we do it, the whole process of making a recording. By the time I think I worked there for about 18 months in all. It seemed longer, because there was always something. Yes, there was a lot going on. Mm-hmm. I was supposed to be have been doing going to University of the West Indies in the evening for evening classes, doing economics, sociology, and government, the politics course.
Wow.
But you see, what I tended to do was I'd go to UWI to classes when I was finished at Federal. And sometimes
like 2 in the morning.
It finished at 9 o'clock at night. It finished maybe 6 o'clock, but 9 o'clock, typically 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, finish at 1 a.m., the next morning. So I didn't get a whole lot done.
Sorry, so who are some of the the people that you worked with, that you met while you were at Federal?
As far as technicals are concerned, it was a man called Buddy Davidson.
Okay.
He was, as far as I know, he's really somebody who is marine radios. He did things, he did ship electronics. He had an interest in that, and he ended up being the engineer. So he wasn't specifically a musician or an audio electronics person. He was just an electronics person who liked music. So
kind of fit into the industry.
Yes, and so there was a lot of fumbling around done. The producers, the couriers were businessmen.
Right.
They're Middle Easterners. Making a buck in Jamaica.
Right. And who were some of the artists, like the recording artists that you were working with then?
Well, let me see. Bob Andy, Judy Moat, I remember. She was in a group there, what was it, the Galettes or something. The Wailers, Wailers at that time. You'd from time to time, you'd see practically everybody passing through.
Okay.
Remember, those weren't the days of... You're gonna have to turn off that. That guy has a very loud voice.
That's fine. So so those of you who are listening, you might be hearing lots of things. You might hear birds. You might hear cars. Really, where we're doing this interview is very Caribbean. We're doing, very tropical. We're on Peter's veranda, and at any moment we might be interrupted with coffee, and the birds are twittering. There's traffic and there's people selling glina. So to paint a picture, when I look out, I'm seeing mango trees and rocking chairs out on the lawn. So don't worry, Peter. Continue. So you're seeing all these different people come through.
Yes, we can go off about the sociology of the thing, because now that I can look back on it, when it wasn't happening, it was it's very interesting. We would have auditions. There was a sort of, we were in one of the buildings, one of the outbuildings, Ken Lazarus and myself, and we're there with the piano and the desk and the record player and thing, and a big box of 45s sent in from record companies sending records to other, and we were looking for records to do reggae covers.
Okay.
So this the box that they pack toilet tissue in.
Right.
That size box. Right?
Oh, so these are mostly R&B records, or
it was everything.
Ran the gamut. Okay.
Everything. There was rock, R&B, country, whatever. All sorts of things. And it was apparently, I never saw it happening, but the system was that if you wanted to audition to do some recording, you could just show up at the gate of the place, and then they would say, "All right, go around and stand up by that door there," right? and then they would go in and come into us and say, "We have people outside," and then we'd go and audition.
Oh, okay.
After a while, it got so intrusive and disruptive. We started doing it. It's okay. It's only 12 to 2 every day. 12 to 2 every day.
Okay.
Because Federal Records, remember, is on an industrial terrace.
Right.
So what happens is all the factory workers, when they get lunch at 12...
They come and audition?
Yes, they come and audition.
Okay.
Man, it was an experience. It was an experience.
Any factory worker auditioned and became a star? Or became well known?
There were one or two who ended up being recorded.
Okay.
They're being recorded. I don't know. I don't know how many. I know that a couple of them, couple of those recordings went up the charts.
Okay. All right. So you're at Federal Records. You started as the assistant, you said? Or
I was an assistant to Ken Lazarus, the A&R.
And then, so what did that involve you doing?
I would, a lot of the time, I would figure out the chords for the tunes. If somebody comes in and sings, I would figure out the accompaniment. Or you would put on a record and say, "This sounds interesting. How does it go?"
So you're arranging. You're lifting.
Yes.
You're lifting arrangements and you're arranging.
Ken had just before that been working for Byron Lee. He was the Byron Lee's band leader.
I see.
And then he left Byron Lee and then went over to Federal. And did this. But my ear was, better than Ken's, and so that it sort of evolved to be my role. And then I was general factotum. I should have, what probably should have happened is I should have been one of the rhythm musicians there. But as it turned out, I am not a particularly good rhythm player. Apparently, I'm not as good a rhythm player as certainly as I thought then, right? And my time, when we say people have all the good rhythm players, they, whatever their stage of development in terms of chops, they all have good time. And my time is mediocre. So this is why I'll never be a really great rhythm player. But I was useful in practically every other way, for help with background vocals and things. And one of the things that I seem to remember, it started at Federal, was that when the synthesizers started to come in, and Federal got a Putney. Putney was an English synthesizer, and it used some little pins, a little matrix of pins, to connect the various, as a sort of what you call it,
like
a matrix bar, a patch bay, right? And of course, the thing about synthesizers that time, and eventually dynamic sounds, when I started doing the rounds and doing a lot of work at dynamic sounds got an ARP 2600. Now, nobody in Jamaica knew anything about synthesizers. But the difference between me, I was like them, I knew nothing either. But I was interested, and I was the only one who was interested in getting any sound out of those things. Everybody is just kind of, couldn't understand it and blocked it out of their head. So the first introduction of synthesizers in Jamaica wasn't very successful. Right. But
all right, so you're on this path of discovery with the synthesizers. How did any of those sounds or textures find their way into recordings that we know today?
I did something with remember those days, those were monophonic synthesizers. Those were analog days. That's single line or double line at most. And they would find their way in, like, obligato lines, guide tone lines, introductions, interludes. But the chord things were a little while away.
Any songs you can name that you remember that?
Do I remember anything? No, for some reason I think there may be one or two that I did at Dynamic, but I know the Putney was baffling. The Putney was really baffling. I had more success with the ARP over at Dynamic than I did with thing. I remember
it feels like the ARP has survived, and I'm not sure many people know about the Putney.
The Putney. Oh gosh, the Putney was very English. Let's put it that way. So you really had to understand what it was that you wanted to do and what you were looking at, and B, how to operate the matrix, the patch bay, the little pin patch bay they had, and between the two things, you it was very befuddling,
So all right, so after the initial thing with synthesizers, what happens next? Because I'm sure there's going to be a time when we try it again with the synthesizers, and
yes. Not long after that, I went away to college in America.
But it wasn't Berklee you went to initially.
I started out going to BU as a sophomore. I'd scraped up enough credits at UWI to sort of
transfer
as a sophomore. You have to understand that at that point in my life, I ended up in Boston bewildered and wondering how the hell did I get here? My mother sort of tricked me, She basically had her foot in my back and pushed me off there. And But I was doing fine in Jamaica as far as I was concerned. You know, I had my mother's car driving. I had a girlfriend.
Yes.
I was getting studio work. You know, I was, doing the studios. And but life was good.
She thought you were getting comfortable. It's like,
I don't know.
Like,
but
fly, young bird. Go
yes. Yeah. But the thing about it was that once I got there, I put my head down and did the work.
Right.
The work didn't come. It came easier.
Okay.
For me. But what happened at BU was that within 2 weeks. All right. The thing that made me interested, what whetted my appetite, made me even agree to get on the plane and go to Boston, was I'd heard Switched on Bach.
Okay.
And I said, I want to learn how to do that. Right? So I went because I wanted to learn electronic music.
Right.
And I also had an interest in writing music. From I was 14, I decided I wanted to write.
Switched on Bach was Carlos, right?
Was Walter Carlos at the time.
No, Wendy Carlos.
Wendy Carlos.
Right, okay.
Right. And so when I went to BU, the course seemed a little straight,
What were you studying at BU?
No, it's classical.
It was classical
music, composition,
Okay.
the straight classical composition
Okay.
course. And I got a little turned off by some of the teachers.
Okay.
It might have been prejudice. Then again, I looked like a UFO those days, so
they didn't know what to make of you.
Yes, it might not have helped.
We're just being themselves. Probably.
Yes. And this is 2 weeks into, January or something like that. And so getting to Berklee College, which is another city college, was a matter of, walking out to Kenmore Square, climbing over the freeway,
right.
And there you are on Boylston Street. So I went there and found out, and they were taking late entries. So I said, what the hey? I don't know. Nowadays, I'd be too lazy to do that. But I don't know what got in. No,
but did you have any friends going to Berklee, or you met anybody at Berklee, or you knew of Berklee before?
I knew of Berklee before. No, I'm trying to remember why. Because Berklee was the jazz college,
right?
But I wasn't necessarily interested in jazz. But the course seemed to be a little less stiff,
Right.
The medieval music, Renaissance music, and then Baroque, classic, Anyway, I went to Berklee. Then it turns out, and I made a good call by mistake once again. I took an exam and ended up in the advanced placement class, where we did the course, the arranging course, at twice the speed of the regular class, and it suited me perfectly. Because
around what year was this?
1972.
Okay.
1972. Yes.
Okay.
And Berklee was still. Still coming out of the jazz mold.
Right. And
nowadays, it's a much broader approach to music.
That Berklee just opened Berklee Abu Dhabi. I'm just letting you know that.
Berklee Abu Dhabi.
Yes. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. But I'm just letting you know that. So
and Berklee is Berklee College, Boston Conservatory.
Well, it's Boston Conservatory at Berklee.
At Berklee.
Yeah. Wow. And there's Berklee Valencia. There's Berklee Abu Dhabi.
Wow.
So fun times.
Yeah. Wow. It really the first year especially, where I did 2 years work in 1 year, I was in a class where everybody knew a little bit of music already. Everybody wanted it. There were no time wasters in the class, and I got taught by the guys who wrote the books.
Perfect. Yes, right? That's always good.
Right. Larry Monroe taught Monroe's arranging course.
Yes.
Ted Pease taught his arranging course.
Wait, Ted Pease taught you?
Ted Pease taught me.
He taught me too. He taught me too.
Well, that's 20 years later, Michael.
That's the 90s, yeah.
God, could he stand up?
Oh,
he was always a tall guy.
Yeah, he was still tall and he was fine. Yeah, I mean, he must have been really young when he taught you too, because it didn't seem particularly old when he taught me.
Yeah,
so
that's wonderful.
Taught me the chord scales class.
Wow. And also, I'd wanted to do the degree course.
Right.
But I couldn't get my SAT scores. My SAT scores, by the way, weren't very good because I had just heard about SAT scores in Jamaica. So I just showed up, I paid the fee, and one day I showed up and took the exam.
So you needed SAT for Berklee then?
Yes, well, for the university course.
Oh, because I didn't need it when I went. I don't think you need SAT for Berklee now.
Well, the thing, with my scores, I probably no, because I did zero preparation.
Right.
Zero preparation.
Yeah,
I knew a little bit about maths and
yeah.
and my English, but the SAT scores were reasonably poor. But anyway, I didn't have my SAT scores at the time, so I ended up doing the arranging diploma course.
Okay.
And I did that for 2 years. So when I switched over to the degree course after the second year, I had more arranging courses than I needed. So my stay at Berklee was very productive in terms of the skills.
Right.
The nice thing about Berklee is that, and I heard it mentioned when I went there, what you get is 80% of what you learn at Berklee, you can use it.
That's true.
Right. And it's a little less sure if you do a straight classical degree,
right,
or a straight jazz degree for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And they always used to come. The teachers told us that the people in Boston, Boston Conservatory, New England Conservatory, BU, UMass, Harvard, they're all complaining that they have all these grand music courses, and the Berklee guys get the gigs.
yes.
So that was I think it was a good call. It was a good call.
So all right. So how did being at Berklee now go with the technology?
Oh yes. Well, see, Berklee filled in the gaps.
Okay.
Right? It filled in the gaps for me musically, because that's when I found out what it is I had been doing 10 years, 8 years before then, when I was a teenager, figuring out
you're teaching yourself these things.
The Burt Bacharach songs and the Motown things and the jazz things. I couldn't do the names and things. And then when I eventually ended up doing electronic music, then you say, oh, so that is what was happening when you pushed up that fader and turned that pot, know. And then also what dovetailed into that is going into electronics course, having worked at a recording studio.
So yes.
So all the technology the things are falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
So, if people describe their interaction with me, they say that what I have is a good grasp of what it is we're doing.
Right.
It's not this assorted bunch of facts and experience combined.
Okay.
So it was very, like I said, it allowed me to integrate the formal training at the college with the experience, the experiences that I had. This is why they use this microphone for this singer.
Okay.
This is why they use this microphone for that instrument. Okay. And this is why you hear them complaining about the cables and the this, that, and the other, And the other thing that happened with my during the 70s was that when I was going to college, by then I had done my first jingle, and I was in demand as a jingle writer. So what I would do is every time I had a holiday, I'd come back to Jamaica, and there'd be some work for me.
Okay.
And I would do it, get paid for it, and that would be the plane fare to come back the next time. Okay. And so I never lost touch with Jamaica. That's the important thing.
That is very important.
I did so that when I finished my course, I was obligated to come back and teach, because I was on a government scholarship.
Okay, right.
But I had my business. My business hadn't disappeared from the Jamaican scene.
Okay. All right. So you were at Berklee, and you were coming back and forth doing jingles. Did any of the technology that you learned at Berklee? Because I mean, at that time there was no department really yet there was no degree in technology, was there? Or
no.
Right. So there was some courses, and there was no recording degree.
As
yet.
A matter of fact, there was a course. I forget the name of it, but a guy called Joe Hostetter, ran the course. It was called Recording Technology, and that's where I learned. I mean, my students here say that, that if you come into Mr. Ashbourne's class, the one thing you're going to go out is learning how to wrap a cable.
Yes.
So I got that from Joe Hostetler. The first thing you do when you go in his class, listen, this is how you deal with the cables. I don't want to see any twisted cables and the thing. And it started from there. And what it was is introduction to tape recorders and those sorts of things.
Okay.
And of course, I had there worked at Federal, with these multi-track machines and these big boards, fairly big boards for those days,
So, all right, so when at that time then, when you were coming back and doing the jingles, it was still in a kind of a studio environment. You didn't really have your own recording setup as yet.
No. Those.
We didn't have sequencers, and you didn't have not yet.
The sequences. No. Those were the days when an agency called you. You went, got a brief, then you wrote the thing, and then brought in a singer. In my case, I didn't sing, so I brought in a singer, and then me on the piano or guitar or something. We would do a kind of you sing it, I play it, and then yes, and we take it to the thing, and then maybe it goes to the client, or maybe it goes back. I have to write it again, and goes to the client, and then when the client approves it, then they send it back to you. You can finish it. Then we rent time at the studio and hire musicians and make them come, and we all do the recording. By then, those days were multi-track anyway, so it wasn't the days of everybody jumping in there and recording at the same time.
Bounce everything to one track and they overdub. Okay.
But by then it was multi-track. So we would do those. That was how it was done. I was archiving some things the other day. By the time we got to 1976, it was a less expansive version of what's done today. You're layering recording. But you'd record the rhythm section, by itself. Then you maybe put on the voices, and then you put on whatever sweetening there is, and then you do mixing. The other thing you had to learn with jingles is how to mix a jingle in 10 minutes. Because
the turnaround,
the turnaround time. This kind of especially the excesses of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. This kind of thing where you sit down and listen to a playback. A monitor mix of the thing for 2 hours, and then you decide how you're going to approach the mix. No. You finish recording, mix it. 15 minutes
and
we need the masters.
That was especially true for you, because you were here sometimes for a very short time just to get this thing done.
I had to get them
paid
done.
And go back.
Yes, because those and so it's it's not as bad as, but it was going towards a New York vibe, ram bam, slap it down and get it.
Who were some of the companies you did jingles for at that time?
McCann Erickson.
So that's the ad agency.
Ad agencies. Right. It was overwhelmingly ad agencies those times. Because there was an advertising association, but actually it was a sort of cartel where they sort of said, okay, you want to do advertising, let's see what your product looks like. And they sort of weeded out, in other words, they tried to keep the standards of the advertising up. And then somewhere in when was it, the 1990s, the Fair Trading Commission or something, or somebody, one of those government agencies, decided it was a cartel and it should be disbanded. And advertising has never been the same since then. The standards have plummeted. The production values are anything goes.
Well, actually. As you were saying before, anybody with a computer,
anybody with a computer.
My son is a producer,
yes,
and so he can do it, and we're not going to pay him. So, and then it sounds that way.
Yes.
A lot of the times, okay, all right. So we're let's say we're after we finished Berklee.
Yeah.
And you're back. You're back here now. You're teaching.
Yes, I was teaching and
working.
Yes,
so you're teaching. You're doing jingles, and you're probably how many groups you had performing with?
No, those days I was just studio and teaching at the Jamaica School of Music. Oh yes, as far as equipment goes, what I did, my mother helped me because she got a bank loan. She underwrote a bank loan for me. So I borrowed some money, during the last year of my course, and I took that money, converted to US, went up and bought some equipment.
Boy, Peter, it seems like your mother always had your best interest at heart. I mean, when she kicked you out of the country, it was for your best.
Of course.
And then I know she's underwriting your start.
Yes, of course. No, I was very fortunate. Yeah. But on the other hand, I wasn't as rebellious as I could have been, because I've seen other people having. I've had problems with one of my children too. Yeah. So what I got was a 4-track Tascam, tape recorder, and there was there was Morgan ARP and Buchla and those kind of synthesizers available at the time,
and they're all quite expensive,
and they were very expensive. But at the same time, there was another Massachusetts, New England company called Electrocomp. Just another engineer guy called, I think, Dale Blake or something. I ended up being quite familiar with them at the time, and they were making synthesizers. And their brand was Electrocomp.
Okay.
And I still have them in the back there.
You still have it? Okay.
I brought a EML 101. Unfortunately, termites have eaten out the wooden case. I still have the electronics.
Okay.
But, and I still have a step sequencer that they eventually made.
Okay.
A step sequencer. That's the first time I'd ever seen a quantizer.
Right.
We didn't know about. You see, remember my electronic music is analog.
Right.
But it's just at the point when I was leaving school was when digital started to become important.
So when you got this equipment around what year was that? Was that 80s?
That was 1976.
1976, okay.
1976. And by the time, within 4 years, you had the Fairlight and the Synclavier and those things. Those were Synclavier is primarily a FM synthesis thing, but remember Synclavier, you know how much Synclavier used to cost?
No.
The base Synclavier was $75,000 and a fully loaded one was approaching $200,000.
Okay.
Remember something, that those were the days when a tape machine is $130,000.
Yes.
A Neve board is $180,000.
Yes.
And synthesizers, I ended up buying a few Oberheim pieces of equipment, and these things would regularly cost $4,000.
Right.
Each. $4,000.
You still have the Oberheim?
I still have some Oberheims here, right? And not only with that equipment, including the Electrocomp equipment that I got, when we bought it never finished make.
Oh, really?
Yes. It wasn't finished. It all had all kinds of flaws in them. So we bought it, you turn it on, and 80% of it would work.
This was before the days of beta testing.
No, this is not beta test. It's just that the market. All right, the market for synthesizers was very small.
All right,
relatively small, and then you had half a dozen companies competing for the business. Yeah. So they had to kept rushing out this equipment.
I see.
And so I would buy a piece of equipment, and then for the next 9 months, you get a mail. Engineering change order, and they send a couple of resistors, maybe a up amp and thing, and a circuit, and you have to take out this and put in that, and then there's a new calibration procedure, and it would just went on and on.
But with that process, you learned a lot as well, though, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just like when my mother's car, her first car, was a truly awful car. And I learned how cars work. Okay. Because of it, because you end up on a street. Yes. Okay. So I'm not like the people nowadays who can only use software. If you notice, I come like a bitter old man kind of a thing, because I've been through the days of going to the studio to do a recording, maybe for somebody else. You turn on the equipment, and Jamaica's power supply wasn't so good those days, and we'd have a brownout, or what they call a half-second power cut, bloop off, bloop on.
Yes.
And the synthesizers hated that, because their digital They're computers.
Yes, yes.
So you'd have to. That's the end of the synthesizer. There, you pack it up. You go to Miami.
Right.
And fix it, and then you come back. You'd have things like that, or which I ended up. I have a 4.5 digit multimeter in there, thing that measures millivolts.
Right, right.
Me, who likes electronics but doesn't know anything, high school. I'm at a high school level, and I just learned to have to troubleshoot my own stuff.
Okay, okay.
And be great friends with your electronics guys.
Okay.
Because they have to be willing to sit down with you and the synthesizer for the next 4 hours to try and get this thing to work again.
Right, right.
It was challenging days. I've had Oberheim stuff. I had a Prophet 5, which was very nice instrument when it worked, because sometimes it didn't.
Okay.
The Electrocomp started to make modular equipment, so I'd buy modules and put together some stuff. It wasn't boring.
Right.
It was, but I wouldn't have now that you think about it, having the electronic music course was what enabled me to kind of go along that path with confidence. Right. That if I'm buying this, then I'll be able to use it because I know what it's used for.
So the modular synth thing is a big thing again now. Would you ever consider, because it's an investment still, so to be buying all these different modules, would you ever consider going that route again?
Do you know the biggest problem with modular synth? Well, the biggest problem with the analog, that analog concept, is the amount of time it takes.
Right.
People, this is what we don't. This is what I didn't have. I ended up started using the presets in the machines, because you have 2 jingles to do, right? And you go in this studio and you have 4 hours.
Well, there's two different ways that you're going to use this. Is either you're going to be using it to do something like jingles or pop music, or you're going to make a performance out of doing dispatching, which is really what nowadays. Anybody who has modular synth, that's what they're doing.
Which is the original concept of electronic music, to make a new type of music,
and to do it live, because that's what they're doing now.
They're
patching live, and they're creating the textures, and everything is happening live. And that is the performance. So,
and the difference is you just put an electronic beat in it. Doof, doof,
yes,
doof,
or you
doof,
create
doof,
it,
doof.
create it, and then you go, and then you start doing
Yeah.
textures on top. And so, there's more than one way to look at electronic music. So,
it's come back and
exactly.
It's
but of course, that's more academic.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah. I learned from first principles.
Yes.
Where you go into you have 2 hours on the machine. You're right, and then you go in and you spend 45 minutes setting up a wonderful patch, with these modifiers and these sync things and these and all these kind of things, and you get your filters going, and you press the button and nothing happens. And you spend the next 15-20 minutes trying to figure out what you've done wrong,
right?
And then you find out that you haven't turned it on. Things like
yes,
that.
Yes.
So and that is what the Arturia.
The collection.
The Arturia Moog Modular, which was the first of the Arturias that I got to. I've tried more than once. The first couple of times I tried to make a patch from scratch.
Right.
Patch. 2 hours, nothing.
Brought back memories, huh?
Nothing. And you're better off with those things, starting off with a patch,
right, and then
adjusting it.
Right.
But
okay.
So my problem with the things nowadays is the amount of time it takes to set up stuff, because there's some really nice stuff out there.
Okay.
Things that you could say, boy, that sounds really interesting, but I can't afford the equipment.
Yes. Yeah.
And now it's a software patch, I bought a synth.
Of course, the purists
for 99.
That's not the same.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But they always said that you can always tell the ARPs from the Moogs, from the Buchlas, from the, you know, Electrocomps, whatever, from the Yamahas and the Rolands and stuff, because their output stage was all different, was all designed different. So the output amplifiers would always color the sound.
Right.
But nowadays it's all coming through your interface anyway. So
yes,
you know.
True. Okay, all right. So let's go back a bit. So now let's go to where you've started creating your own studio now. When did you start? What was the first?
No, what happened? Remember, I told you I bought equipment.
Right.
And then came. I mean, it was a bit of an adventure too. But the original idea was to simply make a facility for my electronic music.
Okay.
You know, I never intended to build a studio.
Okay.
Right, a commercial studio. There are a lot of people in Jamaica thinking I never intended to do that. I just wanted to get something that I could do electronic music.
Okay.
I was still being pure.
Right.
But as it turned out, it was a good vehicle for me to do better demos. As a matter of fact, quite a few of my demos ended up on the air.
Okay.
You know, sometimes when you record something and, you know, the whole turns out to be greater than the sum of the parts.
Yes.
And you get something that just has a sound.
Like which ones ended up?
No, there were some homemade ones, like there was a little jingle called 17 Plus.
Okay.
And it was a demo. And I, you know, you send it in to the guy, and you know, driving around in the car, and all of a sudden you hear it. You call him and say, well, hey, you never told me anything. He said, no, I put it on the air.
Okay.
He said, but that's a demo. Oh really? But send in the bill.
Okay.
Right? So it would happen. And so by then, you know, that whole music industry, the do-it-yourself music industry, and the synthesizer market was starting to blossom. Right. This is the 1980s, eh? So I got, just like everybody else, I got gear lust.
Yes.
So anytime you got any money, you know, you'd try and go buy things. So my, you know, the same thing, equipment beside my bed.
Yes.
It just got more and more and more, and then simultaneously recording in Jamaica, there was a big upsurge of it, and I would have to do jingles, and I can't get studio time.
Right.
I couldn't get studio time. You know, you have a jingle on Monday. They tell you, okay, it's approved. Can you give me the jingle on Wednesday? I say, well, as long as we can get in the studio, you can. But I, you know, so you call everybody and you find out that the musicians, the singers are available, and then you call Tough Gong.
Right.
They're booked out till next week.
So this was early 80s?
This is also 1980s, yes.
So this is also like the beginning of the dancehall scene. That's where everybody was recording.
Yes. There was it was the music business. The producers in Jamaica, you know, always responded to money. These not all of them knew anything about. Well, very few of them knew anything about music formally.
Right.
But some of them had a better feel for it than others. But all of them went in there hearing that you can make money.
Okay.
That is how, you know, it's very few of them, I would think, that say, boy, I like music, so I'm going to go and lose money.
Right,
you know?
Right.
So at that time, and there was probably some, you know, one of the drug money could have been slushing around at the time.
Okay.
So there was a lot of that going on. And I just couldn't get in the studio, so I ended up doing a few jingles in my bedroom.
Right.
I eventually moved the bed out because, you know, we couldn't fit in there.
Yes.
Right. And I got another 4-track tape recorder, and between the two things, you know, we had a 6-track or an 8-track thing.
And you were syncing? How were you doing that?
Yes, we did. Sometimes we did a sync thing, and sometimes you did it Beatles style. You
just
mix down the 4
two tracks or
one track on the other.
Okay.
So it was because the studio time also became hard to get that I ended up doing things at here.
Okay.
And of course the musicians, you know, got cut out of that, and they weren't so happy about that. Well, but that's where the rest of the world went.
So you were using your synths, and you're doing sequencer. What were you using as a sequencer then?
Well, The first sequence, well, aside from the what you now call step sequences,
Right.
was I have a 16-step sequencer, but you use that for music, for musical applications.
Okay.
But the sequencer, you know, a sequencer
Yes.
with thing there was an Oberheim machine.
Okay.
I think, and I think that one, what they said, 13,000 events. It had a the capacity was somewhere in that region, and we used that to run the sequences, run the rhythms for these things, and eventually there was you hear that computers. You know, the other thing I did was I always had subscriptions to the magazines.
Right.
So even though I was in Jamaica, I was keeping up with where
So like electronic music magazine.
Yeah, electronic keyboard magazine,
Keyboard
electronic
Okay.
musician.
Okay.
And so you kept up with what was going on, and then you found out that computers
Right.
are starting to use the
So what was
business
this? Atari?
things.
What was the first one?
Well, the first one I did, I had, you know, the Mac, I think it was a Mac 2.
Okay.
That's what I was looking at. But when you see the Mac 2, the price was a little daunting. And then when we looked, there was a PC. You could get a PC or get a PC assembled and something, and it would cost like half the price. Some significantly less. And what was it? I think, yes, the Voitra.
Okay.
There was a company called Voitra that made a sequencer, a software sequencer, and then they also made an interface.
Right.
And that sequencer up to now it's bulletproof. It does not crash, right? If anything, the Microsoft, I started off in DOS.
Right. Yes.
Right. So all right. Let me state it formally. I ended up using a PC because the PC was what I could afford.
Okay, and to this day you're still snubbing your nose at Mac.
I keep saying that the Mac system, the Mac interface is very elegant and very slick, and there's a lot to be admired about it. But for a PC person, it's kind of OTT, because I learned from having to get the syntax right. On a command line, Yeah. C:, and going on from there. But once I had the Voitra sequencer, there was unlimited things that you could do.
Right.
The early days of sequence, but you have to remember that also it had taken hold in America, and so everything. No man, that's where you're hearing these people putting out these synth-laden things, and of course, anything. A lot of them were 100% quantized, so it's this.
So it's robotic.
Yes, this thing marching, marching locked. That's where that is coming from, and and also the recording equipment. The prices started coming down, so therefore I could get an 8-track machine, and then I could get a 16-track machine. So this is how I had the facility there,
right?
And then I managed. There was enough space in my yard, built another room,
right?
So that's how I ended up with a sort of room, but it was never supposed to be a studio.
Right. Okay.
So my son has built a studio.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, he's built a studio. But
since then it's gone beyond jingles. I mean, you've done singles for people. You've done albums.
No. As always in Jamaica, there is if you're too much of a specialist, you'll starve.
Right, I agree.
In America, you have to be a specialist because the competition is so great and the standard is so high that you have to specialize in order just to survive.
Right.
In Jamaica, it's sort of the other way around.
Strange, yeah.
You have to be a jack of all trades. And the jack of all trades sort of suits me.
Right.
Suits me because I have training in these different or experience in these different genres, if you want to call it, at a level,
right?
At a arguably a professional level, so I can hop around comfortably from classical to jazz to and pop music.
Right.
So what was happening at one point was that every year I would have some pop music experiment or the other.
Okay.
I'd be doing jingles, I'd be doing musical theater, I'd be doing maybe trying some jazz and thing, but somewhere along the line I'd be dabbling with pop music, with popular culture.
Okay.
And then my experience with A.J. Brown, the singer,
right,
where I ended up, what people say on the road is that he was already talented, and he's very talented and had, he had some experience. He's coming from Montego Bay, but they said I kind of put the polish on him,
right.
And he started performing in Jamaica, and it was extremely. He had a time when he ruled the performance,
yes.
performing.
And you wrote a couple of hits for him.
Yes, and.
So when I listened to those, I mean, was that around the DX7 time period?
Yes, the DX7 was out by then. You're talking about
All Fall Down.
All Fall Down, yeah. But When You Love.
Yeah, When You Love, right.
There's When You Love, but remember those days I was also using Oberheim, so
Okay.
I wasn't, but I had a DX7 by then.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so and so that was the sort
and were
of
you using
pop
drum
side.
machines as well, or were you using MPC or no?
Yeah, but at that time we had a band that was accompanying him on stage, so we just put the band in studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was in that band at the time?
It was Desi Jones and
Okay.
Glenn Brownie, and I think Wiggy Francis was on there. Maybe Mikey Chung sometimes,
Okay.
And it was one of those variable size groups,
Right. Those are respected names, and they're still respected names now. These are some of the best, the best we have.
I kept buying machines, but nowadays I've slowed down a bit.
No, it's software.
Yeah, the software. Yeah,
But every 2 days there's something new. You can't keep up.
I have slightly mixed feelings about the software. The software has enabled. It has democratized a lot of stuff in music. I bought a synthesizer. All right, the other day it was on sale, so I bought it, and I buy stuff when I can,
right?
Because the market is relatively small compared with other markets, right? And the people need to eat.
True. Yes.
The people need to eat. I mean, my son, that same synthesizer that I bought, he says he has a cracked copy. But I bought this one.
Yeah, I'm struggling with my students with that too, because I remember when I was at Berklee, I just left, and I had no money. You take a crack copy, but as soon as you can afford to,
you do it.
You start buying it.
And as a matter of fact, the software that I use on a that's not quite true right now, but all right, let me state the statement first. The software that I use, I'm a Cubase person.
Right.
My Cubase is bought and paid for.
Right.
My Sibelius was bought and paid for.
Right.
Sibelius, there's a little asterisk there. Can I get my rocks off on that? The people who bought Sibelius, which was a big mistake, are people who just want to make money.
So subscription now, just like the Pro Tools.
Yes, my computer, my computer crashed, and so I had to build it back, put it back on, go to get authorization, because I paid for it 10 years ago.
Right.
This is now a subscription service. So I got the cracked copy. I'm using the cracked copy now. I'm going to buy what's it, Dorico.
Dorico, right.
Yes.
Right.
And thing, but anyway, the synthesizer, I was saying, the synthesizer that I bought the other day.
Is it Arturia? I think I have that one as well.
Yeah. But anyway, I brought it, and it has all sorts of things that I want to get into.
Pigments,
yes.
Right.
The pigments too.
Yes.
And it has these very interesting things. And I'm wondering has it been cheapened a little bit? It's a privilege. You know, the 20-year-olds nowadays, they don't appreciate what they have.
But you know, in 20 years' time, they're going to be saying the same things.
Yes. Yeah, because they'll have a chip in their head.
Exactly.
Right, and be able to do that. Yeah.
So we've gone from that strange pin patch bay now you have the virtual pin patch bay.
Yes.
You know, with Arturia and all these things.
Oh yes, I should mention this that I have a Oberheim Matrix.
Right.
Matrix synth, you know, which is it was, at the time it came out, it was a it still is a beautiful machine. The amount of modulation that it can take, it's really nice. It's a sort of analog digital hybrid, where the filters are analog.
Right.
The oscillators are analog. Everything else is digital.
Okay.
And so between the filters and the oscillators, you can still get the Oberheim sound.
Right.
Now that was a 6-voice machine.
Mm-hmm.
My machine is a 5-voice machine because I bought it. Remember I told you about these equipment that wasn't finished?
Right.
When I got it, one of the voices didn't work. I called them. They said, if you can get this circuit board to us, we'll change it.
Okay.
We'll give you a good circuit board. That's California. I can't go to California. I got we had Air Jamaica at the time.
Right.
I got an Air Jamaica pilot to take it to California, and he missed the rendezvous.
Oh, okay. Wow.
He missed the rendezvous. The guy from Oberheim arranged to meet him, and the Oberheim guy went, and the pilot never went.
No. Okay.
Or he went late or something, and it never worked. And I said, all right, I'll try to send it next week.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 days later, Oberheim folded.
Wow. Okay.
Went out of business. But now inside I have Arturia's Matrix 12.
Right.
The software version of the same machine.
Yeah.
One thing, compare the Matrix, the one that I have, the 5-voice, and the 12. If I turn it on, I turn on the machine every now and then, the real machine, and it has a tuning retune where you can calibrate all the things, and if you want to get all the voices calibrated, you might not want to get it calibrated, you know, but if you do want them calibrated properly, it's going to take an hour and a half, because every time you press tune, it's going to come up with errors.
Really?
Yes. A couple of the voices won't work. And so you have to tune it again and then let it burn in, like an old-time synthesizer.
Wow.
And you have to let it burn in. And then the oscillators settle down and the filters settle down, and then you tune it and it comes out perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the difference, you know. The old days, you had to sort of massage the machines to get them to work, you know.
No, you just...
Yeah.
As long as the computer works.
Yes,
yeah.
it's...
Well, good. Thanks, Peter. This was good. The next time we talk, we're going to talk more about... We'll talk about the reggae and the journey there, and some of the misconceptions and some of the, what you call it? The
revisionists.
Revisionists.
The people who are rewriting reggae. Yeah, the reggae history.
Okay.
Yes.
But thanks so much for this. This is going to be, you know, this one's for nerds only. But, yes, thank you very much.
Okay.